Marcus pulled his truck to a stop as the strange blue light faded from the forest ahead. 20 years as a park ranger had shown him many odd things, but nothing quite like the pulsing glow that had streaked across the night sky minutes ago. He grabbed his emergency kit and flashlight. Stepping into the cool mountain air, the scent of burning metal and something sweet like ozone guided him through the pine trees. His boots crunched on fallen needles as he followed a trail of broken branches and scorched bark. Whatever had come down here was big enough to carve a path through the canopy. He found the crater first, perfect circle of melted earth still, radiating heat. In the center sat something that made his rational mind struggle to process what he was seeing. The craft was sleek and organic looking, like a giant seed pod made of silver metal. Steam rose from its surface. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its hull. A soft moan drew his attention to the edge of the clearing. Marcus swept his flashlight across the ground and froze. Ah! A woman lay crumpled against a fallen log, but her skin shimmered with an otherworldly pale lavender hue. Her hair was white as starlight, and when she raised her head weakly, her eyes held depths like twin galaxies. She spoke in musical tones he couldn't understand, her voice carrying pain and desperation. Blood that seemed to sparkle in his flashlight. Beam trickled from a gash on her forehead. Her clothing was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Fabric that seemed to shift between solid and translucent. Marcus approached slowly, hands visible and empty. "Easy now," he said softly, the same tone he used with injured animals. "I'm not going to hurt you." Da-da-da-da. She tried to stand, but collapsed back with a cry of pain. Her leg was clearly injured, possibly broken. Despite every logical thought screaming that this was beyond anything he could handle, Marcus knelt beside her. Her eyes met his, and something passed between them, recognition that transcended species and worlds. He opened his emergency kit, pulling out bandages and antiseptic. When he reached toward her wound, she flinched back, speaking rapidly in her alien language. Marcus held up the supplies, miming their use on his own arm. Understanding dawned in her galactic eyes, and she nodded slowly as he cleaned and dressed. Her wounds, she watched his every movement with intelligence and wariness. Her skin was warm to the touch, and he noticed her breathing was rapid but steady. When he finished, she placed a slender hand over his and spoke a single word that somehow he understood meant gratitude. The forest around them was eerily quiet, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Marcus looked at the crashed ship then, back at the injured woman who had literally fallen from the stars into his world. He made a decision that would change everything. He lifted her carefully in his arms, surprised by how light she felt. She didn't resist, perhaps understanding that she had no choice but to trust this strange human who had chosen to help rather than flee. As he carried her toward his truck, Marcus wondered what he was getting himself into. But something deep inside told him this was exactly where he was meant to be. Marcus's cabin sat 3 miles from the nearest road, hidden among towering evergreens beside a crystal-clear mountain lake. He'd built it himself over the years, a sanctuary from the world where he could find peace and solitude. Now, as he carried the alien woman across the threshold, that solitude was about to become something entirely different. She had lost consciousness during the truck ride, her head resting against his shoulder. In the soft light of his oil lamps, her features were even more striking. High cheekbones, full lips, the color of amethyst, and that luminous lavender skin that seemed to hold its own gentle radiance. He placed her carefully on his bed, the only one in the small cabin. Her breathing was steady but shallow, and he noticed her body temperature seemed higher than human normal. The bandages he'd applied in the forest were already showing signs of her unusual physiology. The wounds beneath healing faster than should have been possible. As dawn broke over the lake, she stirred. Marcus had spent the night in his reading chair, dozing fitfully and checking on her periodically. When her eyes opened, they immediately found his, with an alertness that suggested she'd been aware of his presence even while unconscious. She sat up slowly, wincing slightly, and looked around the cabin with curiosity rather than fear. Her gaze lingered on the stone fireplace, the handmade furniture, the shelves lined with books about nature and wildlife. Ill. When she spoke, her voice was clearer now. Though still in her melodic alien language, Marcus had been thinking about communication. All night. He pointed to himself and said clearly, "Marcus." Then he pointed to her and raised his eyebrows questioningly. A smile played at the corners of her mouth. The first he'd seen from her. She touched her chest with graceful fingers and said, "Nyla." The name seemed to shimmer in the air between them like music. Over the next few hours, he developed a basic system of communication through gestures, drawings, and simple sounds. Nyla was clearly intelligent, picking up English words with remarkable speed. She drew pictures of her world, showing him cities that floated among clouds and beings who lived in harmony with nature and ways. Humans had forgotten when Marcus brought her food. She examined each item carefully before tasting it. Some things she could eat, others she politely declined. He found himself fascinated by the way she moved, fluid and graceful, even while injured. There was something almost hypnotic about her presence. As the day progressed, she insisted on helping. Despite his protests, she observed his daily routines with intense interest, learning quickly how to tend the fire, organize his supplies, and even help prepare meals. Her injuries were healing at an astonishing rate, the gash on her forehead now just a faint line. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Nyla began to speak in halting English mixed with her own language. She told him about her ship, how it had been damaged by what she called hunters who pursued her across the stars. Her people, she explained through gestures and broken words, were explorers and healers. But some in the galaxy saw them as threats. Marcus found himself drawn not just to her otherworldly beauty, but to the gentle strength in her eyes, the way she faced her situation with courage rather than despair. When she tried to apologize for bringing danger to his peaceful world, he surprised himself by taking her hand. Her skin was softer than silk, and at his touch, she looked up with those galaxy-deep eyes. In that moment, something electric passed between them, a connection that had nothing to do with species or worlds and everything to do with two souls. Recognizing something in each other, neither of them pulled away. 3 weeks had passed since Nyla's arrival, and the cabin had transformed into something magical. She had a natural gift for making everything more beautiful, arranging wildflowers in unexpected places and somehow coaxing his struggling garden into vibrant life. Her presence filled the space with warmth that had nothing to do with the fireplace. Marcus watched her from the doorway as she worked on her ship's communication device, her brow furrowed in concentration. She had been trying to contact her people, but the damage was extensive. Each morning they walked to the crash site together, and each evening she worked by lamplight, her delicate fingers manipulating crystalline components that seemed to respond. To her touch, her English had improved dramatically, though she still spoke with a musical accent that made even simple words sound like poetry. They had developed rituals together, sharing morning coffee as the sun rose over the lake, cooking dinner side by side as evening painted the sky in brilliant colors. "The quantum matrix is responding," she said without looking up, her voice carrying excitement. "But the power coupling needs... ... She paused, searching for the word in English. "Time," Marcus suggested, settling beside her on the workshop bench he'd built. "Patience," she corrected with a smile that made his heart skip. "Always you teach me patience." Their hands brushed as she reached for a tool, and the contact sent familiar warmth racing through him. These moments had been happening more frequently. Innocent touches that carried the weight of growing feelings neither had fully acknowledged. That afternoon, they hiked to a hidden waterfall he'd wanted to show her. The pool at its base was crystal, clear and fed by mountain springs. Nyla had never seen anything like it on her world, where water was precious and carefully preserved. "It's beautiful," she breathed, kneeling beside the pool to trail her fingers in the cool water. The afternoon sun caught the lavender undertones in her skin, making her seem to glow from within. "So are you," Marcus said softly, the words escaping before he could stop them. She looked up at him with those galaxy eyes, and something shifted in the air between them. Slowly she rose to her feet, never breaking eye contact. They stood there, in the spray from the waterfall, the rest of the world fading away. "Marcus," she whispered, stepping closer. "My people have a saying, the heart knows no boundaries, only truth." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing the delicate line of her cheekbone. She leaned into his touch, eyes fluttering closed for a moment, before opening to meet his gaze with stunning vulnerability. "What are we doing?" he asked, though he made no move to step away. "Something that feels right in every possible way," she replied, her hand covering his where it rested against her face. The kiss, when it came, was gentle at first, tentative exploration between two beings from different worlds. But as she melted against him, her arms winding around his neck, Marcus felt something ignite between them that burned brighter than any star. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nyla rested her forehead against his. "In my language," she whispered, "there is a word for when two souls recognize each other across impossible distances. Janara. It means destined connection." "I love the sound of that," Marcus murmured, pulling her closer. They spent the rest of the afternoon by the waterfall, talking, laughing, and stealing kisses that tasted like spring water and promises. As evening approached, they walked back to the cabin hand in hand, something fundamental having changed between them. That night, as they sat by the fire, Nyla curled against his side on the couch he'd built years ago for one. Her head rested on his shoulder as she worked on a small device, her free hand playing with his fingers. "What's that?" he asked, watching the delicate components respond to her touch. "Memory crystal," she explained. "I'm recording this place, these moments. So no matter what happens, I'll never forget." The implication hung in the air between them. Her ship was nearly repaired. Soon, she would have to decide whether to contact her people, whether to leave this world behind. And Marcus would have to decide if he was brave enough to ask her to stay or strong enough to let her go. For now, though, they had this moment, this perfect evening by the fire with her warmth pressed against his side and possibilities shimmering in the air like starlight. Love and sacrifice. The morning Marcus woke to find Nyla's side of the bed empty and cold. He knew something had changed. Over the past month, they had fallen into a rhythm of shared mornings, her musical laughter mixing with birdsong as they prepared breakfast together. But today, silence filled the cabin like a held breath. He found her at the window, still in the flowing sleep gown that seemed to be made of captured moonbeams. Her usually radiant skin was pale with worry, and she held her communication device. With trembling fingers, "They're coming," she said without turning around. "My people. I managed to send a distress signal yesterday, but that's good news," Marcus said, though something cold settled in his stomach. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her against his chest. "You'll be safe. You can go home." She turned in his arms, and he saw tears tracking down her cheeks like liquid starlight. "They're not the only ones who received the signal. The hunters who damaged my ship, they monitor our communications. They will come too." Marcus felt the world shift beneath his feet. How long do we have? Perhaps 2 days, maybe less. Her hands fisted in his shirt as she pressed closer. "Marcus, I have to tell you something about why they hunt us." They moved to the couch by the dying fire, and Nyla told him the truth she'd been protecting him from. Her people weren't just explorers and healers. They were guardians of ancient knowledge, keepers of technologies that could heal worlds or destroy them. The hunters wanted that knowledge, wanted to use her people's gifts for conquest and control. "So you see," she finished, her voice barely a whisper, "I have brought death to your doorstep. Everything beautiful we have built here, I may have destroyed it all." Marcus cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Look at me, Nyla. Really look at me. Do you see regret? Do you see anger?" She searched his face and found neither. Instead, she saw the same love that had been growing between them like a garden in spring, deeper now and stronger than ever. "I see someone who would do it all again," she whispered in wonder. "Every single moment," he confirmed, sealing the promise with a kiss that tasted of tears and desperate hope. They spent that day as if it were their last, because it might well be. They made love with the intensity of two souls who had found their other half across the vast darkness of space, every touch a promise, every whispered word a vow. Afterward, they lay entwined in the afternoon sunlight, streaming through the window, skin touching skin, as if they could merge into one being. My world, Nyla said, tracing patterns on his chest with her fingertips. When two people join there, hearts completely, we perform the Janara bond. It ties our life forces together across any distance, any barrier. Tell me what it means, Marcus said, though something in her tone warned him the answer might break his heart. It means that no matter where we are, what worlds separate us, we remain connected. But it also means— She paused, struggling with words. If something happens to one, the other feels it. Always. Marcus understood. She was asking if he was willing to bind his heart to hers, even if it meant a lifetime of longing should they be separated. She was asking if their love was worth that risk, he answered, by pulling her up for a kiss that left no doubt about his choice that evening. Under the light of a crescent moon reflected in the lake, they performed the Jainara ritual. It was simple and profound, hands joined over her heart and then over his, as she spoke words in her musical language that seemed to make the very air shimmer. Marcus felt something fundamental shift inside him, a new awareness blooming like dawn. After the longest night, now we are truly one, she whispered against his lips. Whatever comes, remember that. Yes. As if summoned by her words, a distant sound echoed across the mountains. Ships, moving fast and low, their engines cutting through the night silence like knives. Marcus and Nyla looked at each other with the certain knowledge that their time of peace was ending. But they faced it together, bound now by something stronger than fear, deeper than the space between stars. The real test of their love was about to begin. Stars aligned, the hunters arrived first, their black ships cutting through the dawn like mechanical vultures. Marcus and Nyla had spent the night preparing, moving supplies and rigging the cabin with every defensive measure Marcus could devise. From his ranger equipment and Nyla's advanced knowledge, remember Nyla said, as they watched the ships descend toward the crash site, "They want me alive. That gives us an advantage." Marcus checked his rifle, though he knew conventional weapons would be nearly useless against their technology. And your people, still 6 hours away, maybe more? Her hand found his, squeezing tight. Whatever happens, do not let them take me. Death would be kinder than what they plan. The first contact came not with violence, but with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once, translated into perfectly accented English. It's human. We know you harbor the fugitive. Surrender her unharmed, and you will be allowed to continue your brief existence. Marcus keyed the radio transmitter he'd rigged to broadcast on all frequencies. This is Park. Ranger Marcus Chen, on protected federal land. You're in violation of about 12 international laws, and I've got backup coming. Nyla squeezed his hand. It was a bluff, of course. His radio barely reached the ranger station 20 miles away, and he'd disabled it anyway to prevent anyone else from getting involved. But the hunters didn't need to know that. Silence stretched for long minutes before the voice returned, colder now. You try our patience, human. We offer one final chance. The answer came in the form of energy blasts that turned trees to ash around the cabin. Marcus and Nyla moved with practiced coordination, using the defensive positions they'd prepared. Her repaired communication device hummed with power as she worked to boost a signal that might reach her people faster. There she breathed as the device finally connected. I've sent our exact coordinates, but Marcus... Through the smoke and flames, figures were advancing. The hunters moved like shadows given form, their technology making them nearly invisible until they chose to be seen. Marcus counted at least 6, possibly more. The boat, he said suddenly. We can reach the lake. They moved through the cabin's rear exit, staying low as energy blasts scorched the air above them, the small motorboat Marcus used for fishing trips. Across the lake was their only chance of reaching cover until Nyla's people arrived. They almost made it. The blast that caught. Marcus threw him into the shallow water at the lake's edge. Pain lanced through his shoulder, and he felt the warm spread of blood. But worse was seeing Nyla surrounded, her hands raised in surrender as the hunters closed in. "Let him go," she called out as they dragged Marcus from the water. "Your quarrel is with me." The lead hunter, a tall figure whose features were hidden behind a reflective mask, gestured dismissively.
Yes.
The human has seen too much. He becomes a liability. That's when the sky exploded with light. Nyla's people arrived like avenging angels, their ships silver and graceful where the hunters were black and angular. The battle was brief but devastating, energy weapons painting the morning sky in impossible colors. When the smoke cleared, half the hunter ships were fleeing, and the rest were burning wreckage scattered across the forest. Nyla ran to Marcus, her people's advanced medical technology already working to heal his wounds. But even as the pain faded, a different kind of agony was setting in. Her rescue ship waited on the lake, and he could see in her eyes the terrible choice she was facing. "Come with me," she whispered, kneeling beside him as her people worked. "My world has oceans and mountains and forests beyond your imagining. We could have forever." Marcus looked at the cabin, damaged but still standing. At the forest that had been his home for 20 years. At the lake where they'd fallen in love. "This is where I belong, Nyla, just like you belong among the stars." "The Jainara bond," she said desperately, "will always be connected, always, I know." He cupped her face one last time, memorizing the feel of her skin, the depths of her galaxy eyes. "That's what makes this possible. Not goodbye, just ... see you later." The kiss they shared was salt and starlight ending and beginning, infinite. Sadness and infinite love wrapped into one perfect moment. As her ship lifted into the sky, Marcus felt the bond they'd forged stretching, but never breaking. Even as she disappeared into the blue, he could feel her love wrapped around his heart like armor, protecting him, sustaining him. Months later, as he rebuilt the cabin and tended a garden that bloomed with impossible beauty thanks to seeds she'd left behind, Marcus would sometimes catch glimpses of silver ships passing overhead. He never knew if one of them carried her, but it didn't matter. In his dreams, they danced under alien stars. In quiet moments by the lake, he felt her presence, like sunshine on his skin. The Jainara bond had made them truly one. Not all the distance in the universe could change that. Their love story had become legend, written not in books, but in the connection between two hearts that had recognized each other across the void. And somewhere among the stars, Nyla felt the same certainty that their story was far from over. After all, the best love stories never really end.